Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Sht podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and once again, you're stuck with me in the driver's seat for today's show. But don't worry, it's going to be a great show. We have a great guest. We're all about how to stop chasing paychecks and how to start building a business we can be proud of. And we do that by interviewing some of the most successful people in all industries to figure out how they got where they are. We have a great guest for you today in Patricia Fripp. Patricia, thank you so much for being here.
Well, I am thrilled to be with you.
Oh, thank you. So, Patricia, maybe the best place to start is to answer this. What is it that you do?
What I do is put the words in executives, salespeople, and other speakers' mouths. My brother, Robert Fripp, who's a very famous guitarist, always says, I'm not surprised my sister gets paid to tell people what to do. She was a very bossy little girl.
So the beginnings of this started at an early age. All right, the groundwork was there. What got you started doing that, Patricia?
Well, you'd have to go way back. So I was born in England at a time when nobody expected anything of girls.
Okay.
And my brother, who is considered by many a genius, brother doesn't think so, but he's very smart, very, very well educated, a deep thinker. And when I was quite young, I thought, well, I'm not as smart as my brother. I'm probably not as smart as the other kids in class. So I never missed school. I received 100% attendance certificates. Never won anything else, but they know I always turned up. And
it's always going to be there.
Talk to your fans and followers and listeners about how to be a success. It has to go back to good work habits.
Yeah, show up, do the work.
And then fast forward, when I was 15, I thought, well, when I was really 12, I thought I'm more artistic than academic. And at 15, I served an apprenticeship to be a ladies' hairstylist. And in those days, my father had to pay for me to go work and be trained in this posh salon. And on a Tuesday evening, models would come in. People would come in and pay 2 shillings, and the apprentices would practice on their hair. Now, all the other girls would do 1 or 2. I would do 5. And I said to my boss, can I bring models in on a Monday? And because he saw I was so interested and committed, he even gave me an old hairdryer to take home. My dad built me a little salon under the stairs. So at weekends, I would do all the neighbors' hair. So naturally, I progressed a lot faster than everyone else.
Sure.
So again, work habits, good work habits. You might not start the smartest or the best, but good work habits and doing more and influencing, for example, my boss, who, you know, the faster I excelled, the faster I could make money for him.
Yeah.
So that worked. And then I left home at 18. And went to move to this island off France called Jersey. It's the Channel Isles. It was a holiday resort island, and it's a tax haven. So a lot of rich people lived there. A lot of corporate headquarters had an office and an answering machine just for the tax benefits. And I worked there, and this is a continual pattern. I worked with gentlemen from the West End of London who could do hairstyles I'd never seen before. But one day my boss told me, Patricia, you bring in 30% more income for the salon than Otmar and Leon. Now, how we got paid, we got a base pay, and obviously, because they were more experienced, their base pay was at least 2 or 3 times more than mine, which I quite expected. I mean, that wasn't an issue. And then we got a percentage and we got tips. Remember, no tax. And what the difference between the other stylist and me, they thought lunch hours were for eating lunch. I knew lunch hours were for squeezing in three or four clients who could only come in at lunchtime.
Yep.
If you were rich, if you were on holiday, you would select appointments to have your hair done based on what you're offered. But if you work in a newspaper shop or the bank or the post office, you had to get your hair done when your boss said your lunch hour was.
Yep.
And this is the secret. It's not only working harder, it's consistency.
Yep.
So you add 5 days a week, every week, four extra clients when other people were eating lunch. It's going to end up, you're going to bring in more money.
Exponentially different. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's
And
taking
that
advantage of the
happened. I moved
opportunities
to
that other people
America,
leave on the
with
table.
no job, nowhere to live, didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
Got a job in the Mark Hopkins Hotel, and I discovered, can you believe, hairdressers in America got paid 50% commission. No base, no guarantee, nothing else.
Mm.
To me, that was a license to steal. And my boss, Charles, in the beauty shop at the Mark Hopkins Hotel, had never seen anyone work like me. And he
Mm.
said, go back to England, bring over 28 your friends, I'll become a multi-millionaire. And I said, Charles, I never worked with anyone like me. You're
Yeah.
lucky to have me. The other guys are going to lunch. I'm
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
in early and staying late. So if there is any secret to my success, it is consistency, getting up early, working harder.
Yeah. No. I don't even want to tell you what today looks like for me, but it's going to be an 8 to 9:30 day for me. 8 in the morning till 9:30 tonight, and that's before I start to catch up on all my other stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So,
I,
you know, in America, I was a hairstylist here. I started traveling nationwide for a hair product company. My pals in Dale Carnegie,
mm-hmm.
we call ourselves the Future Millionaires Breakfast Club. Now, here's another lesson for everybody. I worked in this first really posh men's salon. In fact, it was run by Jay Sebring, the Hollywood hairstylist, and my pals and I, we went to every seminar, every rally we ever heard of. We were very, very ambitious. And there was a time then we hired another young woman, well, not young, but she was older than I was, as a stylist in our salon. And I got a lot of press because it was a new industry. I was the only woman. It was the posh salon. It was the in place to go for all the movers and shakers. And many of them, of course, sat in my chair. And a gentleman came in from K101 radio to interview me to see if I could fill an hour talk show. Well, he didn't know me. Yeah, like you. And and so I said, Judy, you sit down and tell him your opinions as well. I was trying to get her involved. And the first question he asked was, Patricia, you have been outrageously successful. Do other people in your industry resent your success? I said, of course not. They see I work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. And at exactly the same moment, Judy said, of course they do. They don't care what she does.
Yep.
And at age 23, I realized that if I am going to live up to my full potential, I cannot be concerned what people less ambitious than I am think about me.
Yep.
And that's when I chose to always associate with my pals in the Dale Carnegie class. We were all ambitious. We were all striving. We were all into self-improvement and learning more than just our jobs.
Absolutely.
Again,
Getting around the right people.
it's consistency. It's doing more than the next. And it's who do you associate with, which is why we love the National Speakers Association.
Absolutely.
Because we are all ambitious and supportive, encouraging, and celebrate each other's success.
I never leave an NSA event without a whole bunch of things I feel bad about not doing more of, which is great because I mean my experience has been kind of much like yours. I've always worked harder than everybody else. My father taught me I was the boss's son. If you show up to work, you gotta set an example. So whatever
Yes.
everybody else is doing, look at that. You have to do more than that. So I've always guided myself. Whatever I see everybody else doing, I have to try to exceed that. And it served me well, kind of like you're saying. The people that are the other entrepreneurs out there, they see you behaving this way and they're like, that's the good stuff right there.
Yeah.
And you opportunities sort of find you some as you put yourself in a position to do that. But at the same time, willingness to be challenged and to be made uncomfortable, thinking that you're working harder, and somebody saying you should be doing this too, and sitting here and saying, "Oh, you're
Well, of
probably
course,
right."
when you love what you do, I loved being a hairstylist. I loved training other hairstylists. I loved it when a hair product company sent me around to train hairstylists. And so I never felt deprived. Oh, I wish I was going to the movies rather than giving this class.
Sure.
I genuinely liked what I did. And then we were at a big rally, and Don Hudson, who is closing Influence this year,
Mm.
Don Hudson was the MC, and he said, a lot of you are asking us about speaking. Leave your card, and we'll send you information on the National Speakers Association. So I turned up at my first NSA convention at 32, thinking no one's going to want to talk to me. I only talk to Rotary clubs and hairdressers. And two situations appeared. One, I saw the vision of what might be possible. Because remember, I started my apprenticeship at 50. When I went to NSA, I was 2 years in a 10-year lease on my own salon. So when that lease was up, I would have spent 25 years behind a chair.
Yep.
And although I loved it, and I was not ready to stop, I was just doing so well and having so much fun. I thought it would be nice to be in a position at 40 if I wanted to go full time. Second situation, I sat next to somebody at lunch I just lucked out. And he said, I'm in charge of this program called Speak to Me for new speakers. Would you like to get up and do 10 minutes of your best speech? So I stood up and delivered it, the first part of my Rotary Club speech to promote my business. And Mike Frank, who's a past president, Cavett Award winner, CPAE, he came up to me because not only was he a speaker, he had a speakers bureau and he promoted big rallies. And he said, you're the best woman speaker I've ever heard. Do you have a brochure? I said, no. He called me a month later and booked me to speak to 2,000 people on the same program with Dr. Robert Schuller, the minister from Garden Grove,
Yep.
the Crystal Cathedral.
Cathedral guy. Yep.
The big popular speakers, and also Dave Yoho, who is still working at 99.
Wow.
Dave Yoho is the only one who can pronounce what CPAE Hall of Fame really, because it's in Latin, but he's the only one who can say it, which is why we changed it to the Council of Peers Award of Excellence.
I love it. So
only in America and NSA.
Yeah, you go.
And some of this is you have good work habits, which we both totally support and embrace. Once in a while, you just sit at the right table.
Once that, there's a saying from Thomas Edison. It's people miss opportunity all the time because it comes dressed in overall and looks like hard work.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
true.
And so, there's that working hard piece of it. And then there's just that piece of it where you're in the right place at the right time. And because you've done the right things, those conversations tend to go to those right places because you've put yourself there. I got to ask you this, Patricia. I know you love what you do. You always have a smile on your face whenever I see you. You're always going around talking to people. What do you like best about what you find yourself doing now? Kind of, having this successful hairdressing career, being a successful speaker for such a length of time, and all the other accolades you picked up along the way. What do you like best about what you find yourself doing today?
Well, of course, for many years, several decades, I was delivering 100, 120 keynotes a year.
Mm.
And what I said at NSA many years ago, it is unrealistic for us to think we will be the flavor of the month with speakers bureaus for more than 20 years. And believe me, I milked it to death for more than that. And Nancy Lauterbach, who owned Five Star Speakers Bureau, was in the audience. And she said, Patricia, I would never have known to articulate it that way, but you're absolutely right. And I would like to tell you I'm a great long-term planner. I'm really not. What I was smart enough to do, and this is, it doesn't matter what business you're in, listen to your clients. Those who know and love you, they will tell you how they want to work with you.
Mm.
And I was speaking at a national sales meeting, and the national sales manager came up to me and said, Patricia, I liked your speech. However, I loved how you delivered it. Can you teach our salespeople to speak that way?
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes us a year to be in a position to deliver a 1-hour presentation to a hospital board. It's worth $9 million a year if we get the business, and we're losing sales. Has nothing to do with our price or our offering. I keep hearing the presentations of our competitors are better. And when I put together that seminar, little did I know she had given me the secret to always be in demand. No matter what the economy is, and even when I might not look quite as good on iMag as I did at the time.
Mm.
And then I was the first person at NSA who openly said, I work with speech coaches. And I work with different speech coaches. I took comedy writing classes. I took more than 10 screenwriting classes. Not that I had any talent or interest in being a screenwriter. However, Hollywood knows how to tell a good story. And I just absorbed myself. Now, in all fairness, I have no husband, no children, no plants, no pets, and at this point, no debt. Now, you understand that was strictly by choice. I was so focused on learning any skill that might in some way help me be a better speaker and a better coach. And then a lot of people, I was still really, really busy speaking. A lot of people said, well, will you coach me? And I'd say, well, go to Don Bernhard, go to Ron Hart. And then there was a magical Saturday. I gave a speech in Walnut Creek, which is about 35 miles from my home. It was for a small personnel company. The president gave a speech. I gave a speech. We were sitting down for lunch, and she said to me, do you do any speech coaching? And I said, a little for my friends. And she said, I wish I was one of your friends. I went home after that meeting, and I had a voicemail from this very dynamic, what I would call a Frippy type of woman. And this is exactly what she said. I don't know if you do this. However, if you do, I want to buy you for my husband for his birthday. She said 7 of my salespeople came to one of your seminars and they came back raving. And I don't know if you do any executive speech coaching. However, if you do, my husband is a good speaker. However, he has the most important speech of his entire career, and I'd like to hire you. And I thought, okay, Lord, twice in the morning, I got the message.
The message has come through.
Today, I officially put up my shingle. I am an executive speech coach. So again, listen to your clients. The signs will emerge. So what I do now, certainly I still speak. However, how I make my living is really helping tech companies, executives, sales teams, other speakers, anyone who needs to speak. And what is good about being a speech coach compared to being a speaker? Now, I have one client who first hired me in 1987, and I still work for them every single year.
Hmm.
And I speak for them. I deliver a couple of presentations. I run their speaker school for all the industry people who speak at the conferences. I write speeches for 3 industry experts and coach them. I write all the speeches for the outgoing president, the incoming president, the new VP. So, of course, I do a lot more for them than I used to than just speak.
Yeah.
And they said, because I always say, I really appreciate you keep giving me fun assignments. And they said, as long as you want to work with us, we'll hire you, which
Well,
is nice. So
customer
certainly I
loyalty.
do speak, but most of my work is helping other people. And usually when you're a speaker, if they love you, now you might get spin off with other divisions and state associations, but in general they say, oh, we really loved you, but we can't hire you again for 5 years.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're a speech coach, I have a handful of tech companies, every time they have a product launch or a user meeting, they come back to me. So I have clients for years. I don't work with them 12 months a year. However, they have projects that might last 3 weeks or 6 weeks. And that suits me well because now at this point, I like to take plenty of vacations. So I'll say, okay, I'm available. And I'll reach out and say, look, this is my birthday month. I'm celebrating. I see this conference is here. Do you need me to allow some time the week before to come coach you? And so I'm with the regulars, I certainly am in touch and let them know, or they reach out to me and say, "Hey, we're going to need you in September and November. Can you hold us some time?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll go see my friends in Hawaii in between.
Nice. Now, and that's again the reward for the hard work is the freedom to make the choice to
Yeah,
do whatever you want to do. But along that road, it's interesting when I talk to entrepreneurs, we start to talk about the win and kind of the hard journey and stuff like that. But I like to break it down a little bit more because there's something that we all have dealt with, which is unmet expectations and disappointments. And it's one of the toughest parts of choosing the type of work that we do because you only get to eat what you kill. You got to go out and hunt in order to eat at night. And so we have the great account that we're they're between us and one other person and they go the other way. How do you
oh
deal with
yeah, I
yourself?
don't get them all. I get a high percentage of it. Don't get them all.
Yep. So how do you deal with yourself, Patricia, when there's disappointment? What do you do to keep yourself in the fight?
Well, I'm going to quote one of my all-time favorite speakers, who I first met in an NSA conference. We became good friends. He died a few years ago, but he is in my all-time history of having watched hundreds and maybe thousands of speakers. Lane Longfellow was one of my all-time favorites because he had great academic credentials and he was a showman. And he would play the piano and sing to reinforce his points. He was incredible. And I frequently think and quote Lane, he said, as part of his presentation, the trouble with life is that reality lives up to the trouble with life is that reality does not live up to expectation.
Yeah.
And he was talking about in high school, the football star and the beautiful cheerleader. The reality of their lives after isn't always that they're the star.
Yeah.
They might, and he tells a story about the football star. Excuse me, because he was in the marching band. He was a
Yeah. Yeah.
nurse.
Yeah.
He was visiting his parents, and this football star came in to read the gas meter.
Hmm.
And he said, I am not proud of it, but here I am with my PhD and my speaking career and all this.
Yep.
I admit, I that I felt in that moment superior, which he didn't in high school. However, he did say, for that man, the reality of his life did not meet the expectations he had in high school when he was a star.
Yeah.
And when I came to America at 20, no job, nowhere to live, I just came to see what it was like. I didn't have a plan. However, the reality, the reality of my life has so far exceeded any expectation I ever had
Yeah.
that when I look at something that goes wrong, I tripped over a few months ago and broke my finger. I was moving too fast. I didn't see the bump in the road, whatever. It is a mild inconvenience. And yes, when I talk to people and I'm sure they're going to hire me and they don't, well, I've got plenty coming in.
Yeah.
You're
I,
not
I-
going to win them all. That's life. That's business.
yeah.
And
No. I think the idea of circling back to the fact that I'm still going to be here. There's a line that I love from the poem "If" Rudyard Kipling.
yes.
Oh wait, I know I'm butchering it. Rudyard. Um, I know I'm with someone who actually knows how to pronounce it properly. Um, but he has that line in there. He says, if you can meet with success and failure and treat those two imposters just the same, it's such a thing. Like you got to try to keep the bubble in the middle because you're never as great as you hope to be, and you're never as bad as sometimes you feel like you are, and it's somewhere in between. Um,
Bill Gove, the first president of the National Speakers Association, always used to tell us, if you read your review, throw out the top 10% that say you walk on water, because you don't.
yep,
Take out the bottom 10% that think you're awful, because you're not. Go
yep,
with the 80% in the middle.
yeah. No, you got to, you got to. Some of those folks are just having a bad day, and yeah, no, it's a thing. I want to ask you this. This little section here is. I mean, obviously, I appreciate all the great nuggets that you've given us so far, but I like to let people know you a little bit better. So, what would you say you're most proud of that you've accomplished to this point?
Right, I am most proud of the fact that when I left home at 18, I never asked my father for money.
Hmm.
In all fairness, when I came to America, I had $500. Now, I had more money in the bank in England. However, at that point, in the 60s, England did not let their citizens take much money out of the country because we were
Hmm.
still reeling from World War II. I didn't know that at the time, but now I realize
Yeah.
now I'm more of an expert in history. I am most proud that I've been independent. It was nice to know if ever I was unhappy in America, my father could send me, he's in a
Yeah.
position he could send me an airline ticket. But so probably that was that was probably way up there. And yeah,
Sure.
I'm proud that I was first woman president of NSA, which was not my goal. But really, it was just more I stood on my own feet and I made something of myself. Because at that point, I knew if I'd stayed in Wimbledon, where I grew up, I would have always been Arthur Fripp's daughter.
Yeah.
Because he was a successful local businessman. My mother was glamorous and outrageous and would have been me if she'd been born in my time. But, Edie Fripp's daughter. My brother went on to be a very famous musician. So I would have been Robert Fripp's sister.
Yeah.
So to leave, I couldn't have articulated it at the time. I came for an adventure. However, I had to move 6,000 miles away to become who I was capable of becoming.
Right.
So perhaps the message is if our surrounding family, friends have certain expectations of us, perhaps we have to go away and stand on our own feet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that assessment is fair to figure out whether or not those things that we're surrounded with are helping us or hurting us. Measuring that out because sometimes those family expectations can push us, and at other times they maybe are hamstringing us a little bit from what we could be. Uh, Let me ask you this. If you could give the listeners here one piece of advice, Patricia, what would it be?
I would recommend that you learn to be a clear, concise communicator.
Okay.
During the pandemic, many good communicators lost their skills.
Hmm.
And for me, of course, this is my life work. The way you speak, the way you communicate says more about you than your resume.
Sure.
In fact, many of my clients have told me, we only hire, really the top 10%. And one client said he had come from a wonderful school like Harvard, been in the top 5%. We knew we were going to offer him a job. But when he came in, he was so articulate. He was calling executives, you guys. And I said, did you tell him why you didn't hire him? And she said, no, we can't. We can't. Well, if you have friends, good friends, or children who are going out in the world, you need to sit them down and say, perhaps you need to go to Toastmasters. Perhaps you need to record your conversations and listen to them when you are talking in Zoom to your boss or something like that, and just pretend it's not you.
Right.
Think, if I didn't know that speaker based on what they were saying, would I realize they have an MBA?
Yeah.
Would I hire them for $100,000?
Sure. No, I mean, the way you speak and communicate obviously is indicative of how you think and the process that's going on, and whether or not the listener wants any more of what you're putting out. And so, being able to be concise, clear in what you say, and in a way that's interesting is really a skill set. I mean, the thing that I think about Patricia that really moves the needle for me is all the people I talk to that can go back to something that somebody said to them when they were 6 years old that changed the course of their life, right? They said this and I never forgot it. To be that person that could say that thing, we don't know what that thing is. We don't know who's in that room. But the thing that absolutely changes the course of somebody's life for the better, I mean, hopefully for the better, man, that is such a meaningful and worthwhile thing in life to do, especially if you can do that for a living. That is a very blessed way in which to take and spend your time at work, I would say.
Now, if I were going to offer a second piece of advice,
Hmm.
I would say to be considered interesting,
Hmm.
you have to be interested.
Sure.
The key to connection is conversation. The secret of conversation is to ask questions. And the quality of the information you receive depends on the quality of your questions. And when I go out with my brother, understand British people are more reserved than I am. And whenever we go out, my brother, if we met socially, my brother would say, let me apologize in advance. My sister is going to
Yep.
interrogate you. And I say, and brother says you ask people such personal questions. I said, I am genuinely interested in people. When I have a new coaching client, I'll say, all right, I want a snapshot of your life and career. Go back to the beginning. Where were you born? What did your parents do? What advice did they give you that helped you become the person you are today? I go back to the beginning. And it's amazing. With all my clients, I always find what in a movie is the inciting incident. I
Hmm.
say, so when that happened to you at 14, that is how you were destined to be president of this $2 billion software company with aspirations to be 20. And they always say, never realized, but you're right.
Yeah.
Another time, another executive, he just moved from Microsoft to a company in the Bay Area and going through, and he was talking about going through his life, and he said, you know, my at college, we had this brand new PhD teacher. We were his first class. He was still on fire. He hadn't been disillusioned yet. He wasn't much older than we were. And he said, the way he talked about statistics and what you can learn from them. So I said, that's why you left Microsoft to come here. I can't wait to go home and tell my wife why we moved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you only can tell that if you go back to the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, my father used to say it all the time to me. He said, the stuff that happened to you when you were a kid, that stuff sticks with you forever. You don't realize it, but it does. And, it winds up guiding it and moving you in different directions. And that tends to be something that you see in people over and over and over again. Got a couple of really quick questions, maybe not easy, but
All
quick
right, and I
questions.
give quick answers.
All right, there you go.
You
We'll,
know,
we'll
you
make it a
ask
little
one
bit of a
question,
lightning
you've
round.
got 20 minutes. All
All
right,
right,
I give
we'll
short
get it
answers.
done way fast. And that, if you had to pick one book to recommend to people, what would be the one book that you'd say, you know what, you got to read this?
Probably Robert Cialdini's On Persuasion.
On Persuasion, such a good topic.
Mm.
Favorite movie of all time, Patricia?
That's impossible to say, but anything with Jason Statham in it. In fact, on
All right.
Friday, I'm going to see The Working Man. I love high action movies.
I knew we could be friends. Famous person in history you'd want to meet if you could.
Oh, Winston Churchill.
Very persuasive gentleman, and under some very, very difficult circumstances. Person, similar question, but a bit more personal. What person from your past would you like to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could?
My father.
Yeah. Now, much like me, that would be my answer as well. Um, what one piece of advice would you go back and give young Patricia if you could? A younger version of you?
Remember your parents' story,
Hmm. Okay.
which I
What?
always have.
Yeah. No. There's people that forget where they come from. They forget their people. I mean, this year's big goal is I'm taking Mama to your home country and to Paris. That is why I am working the way that I work. We always take care of our people. You only got one set. So, uh, what do you do to unwind, Patricia?
I love high action TV shows. I love movies. I love this morning I went out early walking. I'm in Las Vegas, as I say, and so the weather's really nice early.
It is.
So I love walking, listening to my audible thrillers.
Me
Thrillers
too.
is a recurring. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love going to museums and I love being a tourist. I love being a tourist in my hometown. I'm busy organizing my trip to England for 3 weeks. So I love being a tourist. When I'm invited to speak at an NSA chapter, I always go in, okay, what museums do I want to see? Where can I be?
Yep.
I'll add a couple of days to be a tourist.
It's nice. See, I mean, I have the problem that I'm originally a New Yorker, and so the term tourist is actually an insult that New Yorkers will use with other New Yorkers. What are you, a tourist? Like, if you're ever seen behaving as a tourist as a New Yorker, you're immediately out of the club. Like they tear up your New Yorker card and they throw it in your face. Like they catch you at the top of the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, you're out of the club. And so I had to learn. And so here's my play, because I'm a fat kid too. I'm all about food. I go on all the food tours, and the food tours, some of the history I get on the food tours, the walking food tours, is better than some of the stuff that I get on the actual historical tours. New York being one of the great cities to do, because as far as what we got in the U.S., as far as old cities go, that's about as old as we got. But there's a lot of just such interesting, from the Dutch to the British to that city. And when I go to Europe, it's the same thing. The food tours,
Oh yeah, I
Rome.
love walking tours when I'm in
Yeah.
England. Yes.
Yeah, walk me around, show me stuff. But all right, last real question I have for you, Patricia. If folks want to find you, they want to find out more about you, they want to engage you, whatever, where can people find you?
Well, if you can see my name, Patricia Fripp, go to fripp.com. There are a lot of free resources on speaking and communicating. That would be the best way. I have plenty of information that we give away free. And of course, if you want a conversation, click contact, contact us, and send me an email.
Awesome. Patricia, thank you so much. I know you're very busy. Taking your time means a lot, I'm sure, to our listeners, and it definitely does to me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck with your travels and taking Mother to England and Paris.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank our listeners for spending their time with us, guys. As I always do, I remind you there's never a good excuse not to know your shit. Till next time.